At night, when the shadows rise and dark noises fill every dell and hollow trunk, Wayland Wood in Norfolk is a spooky place to be indeed. And imagine how much spookier it would be for two little lost children wandering through the wood alone. This is just what tragically happened to two wee tots, a brother and a sister, 4 or 5 centuries ago. Now, let me explain. I mean, it's rare that any Tales of Britain story requires a warning in advance, but this tale, which we will call Babes in the Wood, because lots of other people have called it Babes in the Wood over the years, it's sadly all too true to life. And because of that very reason, life being what it can be at times, it is not as happy a story as any of us would like. But we're going to give you a multitude of endings so you can choose what kind of story you want this to be. Anyway, Tiny Tommy and his little sister Tilly were barely out of their cradles when their mother and father were taken away from them. Their parents were struck down by an illness which would be cured by a single pill these days, but the plague of the Black Death cut through the people of Britain like a scythe back in those dark times. Before he died, their loving father, the master of Griston Hall, Thomas de Grey, summoned his younger brother Robert and urged him to take care of the children as if they were his own. In return, the brother, who led an idle and murky life so far, could be master of Griston until Tommy was a man and ready to take over. Robert promised with all his heart that nothing bad would ever befall the two babes, and so the kind father passed away, happy that his children would be safe. The babe's uncle was as good as his word, for a while. But before a year had come and gone, the selfish man began to feel hard done by.
Why should I look after these two noisy, nappy-smelling children, only to be shown the door when they grow up, when I could be master of Griston Hall right away? Ha ha ha!
Asked the uncle of his reflection in the mirror, by far his favourite person to talk to, the only person who really gave him the time of day.
This place, by every right of blood, should be mine, he said, and all I need to do is rid myself of these unwanted babes.
This bad uncle knew a lot of even worse men whom he could get to do his dirty work for him. He gave silver to a pair of villainous villagers and told them to take the two babes far off into the middle of Wayland Wood and simply make sure that they never came back. He would tell his wife and everyone around the babes were being sent to London to be taught in a posh school, and they'd be looked after and everything would be lovely. And with that done, he would eventually announce that the Black Plague had got them, and he would take over the running of the hall and all of its estates, and nobody would suspect his evil plotting. When the two swarthy villagers arrived early the next morning to spirit away the children, Tommy and Tilly were so excited, riding on a cock horse to the greatest city in the world. London was going to be such an adventure, they agreed to each other. But their excitement turned to bewilderment when these men dismounted and led them into the dark and chilly wood. London surely did not look anything like they expected. I mean, where were the palaces and the people and all the horse mess everywhere? But they were such little children, they could not ask the men what was happening. And so they trusted them, following along in the shadowy stranger's wake, hand in hand. Soon those little babes were so tired that they flopped down together on a grassy knoll and fell fast asleep. This was the moment the two men had been waiting for. However, although one of the two villagers, Jim, was certainly a rascal and a criminal, he simply could not bring himself to carry out bad Uncle Robert's orders and leave two such sweet little innocent babes to their fate. His mind made up, he demanded that his partner give up the job right away and find a safe place for the children. "I just can't go through with it, Frank," he told his accomplice, except in a Norfolk accent. But there really was no end to his partner's villainy. Robert de Grey had paid this villager so handsomely that he was determined to do away with poor little Tommy and Tilly there and then.
Now look here, Jim. This is a job and I intends to do it, and nothing's going to stop me,
Frank growled. Nothing, that is, except the slightly more kindly villager. Jim was not a murderer. He did not want to kill anyone. But with a quick and deadly flash of a dagger, he was more content to stop his horrible partner, Frank, than he could be to hurt those two poor babes.
Sorry, Frank,
Jim said as he drew out his bloody knife. I couldn't let you hurt him. He pushed the lifeless Frank down into a deep, mouldy ditch where he was forgotten by all. Nonetheless, the kindly criminal knew that he was now in big trouble with the master of the whole estate. He had to act fast if he didn't want to be caught by the master of Bristol and punished for disobeying orders. It was already getting darker in the forest and colder, and Jim knew he had to spirit away the babes somehow. He decided to ride off on his horse to find food and blankets for them. As he pondered the problem, he would consider where to take them in the morning. As the babes slept, Jim mounted his horse and galloped away. Well, what happened to the kindly Jim, or relatively kindly Jim, nobody ever knew. But when Tommy and Tilly awoke, they found themselves all alone in the deepest, darkest part of the forest. They missed their home and did not know how to get back there. But bravely, little Tommy took Tilly by the hand and they set off to try and find it. After much travelling, hand in hand through the roots and undergrowth of Wailing Wood, the babes found some blackberries that were good enough to eat, but there were not many of them, and so they were both hungry when they once again lay down together to sleep. Even the woodland creatures could not bear to see two such tiny tots lost in the wood together, and so that night they all flocked to the babes to do what they could to keep them safe. Robin Redbreast brought them leaves for blankets, red squirrels dragged moss across to use as pillows, and a pair of kindly badgers sat on their feet to warm them. And that was the last that was ever seen of these two babes in the wood. What really happened to them can never be known, but this is where we give you the chance. This is where you can make your own choice of the many rumours of what happened to the babes in the wood. Some say that angels came down in glory and carried the two babes away to paradise. Some say that kindly birds of the forest, they all joined together to lift the babes high up into the air and fly them away to somewhere else, a foreign country where bad Uncle Robert would never find them. Some say, and this is the favourite version, some say that Robin Hood himself and all his merry men were travelling from Sherwood through Norfolk, through Wayland Wood, and they happened upon these two poor sleeping babes, and Tommy and Tilly joined his band of merry outlaws and grew big and strong in the forest, helping to fight the wicked rulers of Norman England. And that's the story that most people go with today. But the truth is that most say that the poor babes never woke up from that sleep in Wayland Wood, and still their little ghosts can be seen wandering the site, wailing on every chilly, dark evening, trying to find their way home. However, if you do go to Wayland Wood in Norfolk and have a look round, and you do happen to see those two little ghostly babes one twilight evening, remember that Tommy and Tilly are kindly ghosts and will always lead little lost children out to the safety of the wood's edge before disappearing. One thing we do know for sure is that bad Uncle Robert de Grey did not thrive. Being so very bad, he was not deserving of the riches he inherited by doing away with his nephew and niece, and just a few short months after sending them off, he gambled away all the family riches on cards and was kicked out of Griston Hall, and good thing too. The despicable uncle went mad, often swearing to anyone who would listen that two tiny little ghosts were haunting him to his grave. Everybody jeered at Robert for this, but he just wandered, broken and alone, through the Norfolk countryside until death stopped him in its tracks. Nobody missed Robert de Grey at all, but even hundreds of years later, people still remember those two babes in the wood, and they come to Wayland Wood to pay tribute to their memory. And by doing this, we can all make sure that the innocent little brother and sister will never really die, but live on forever in stories like this one. And woods somewhat like this one as well. Keep safe, there'll be more stories to come.